On the podcast this week, did you know there's only 4 ways you can grow your business? Nah, me neither. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancott, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. So this week I listened to Matthew McConaughey on Stephen Bartlett's podcast, which I found a fascinating interview because he's like a really, really successful actor. And there's a really amazing bit in his story, which I implore you to listen to, where he talks about, and you wouldn't really know this, like his journey when, he did like rom-coms and stuff, and he was being like really typecast as being the rom-com guy.
I don't know who he is, but I'm terrible. I'm terrible with names.
Don't know who he is.
What did he play?
Oh God, which Dallas Buyers Club?
No.
Lincoln Lawyer?
Yeah, but like, who did he play in it?
You'd know from when he did the rom-com stuff, wouldn't you? He did. What was the rom-com one that he did? Oh God, I can't remember.
I'm the type of person that if you ask me if I've watched a film, I'll say no, and then about 30 minutes in, I'll be like, no, I have seen this before. So I'm terrible with names. But go on, keep going. Tell us about him. He was on Stephen Bartlett.
Matthew McConaughey. You'd know him. He looks like that.
Oh, yeah, I know who he is, yeah.
You know exactly who he is.
Couldn't name anything he's been in, though.
Interstellar, that was probably a really famous film he was in. Dallas Buyers Club, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That was the one that he was being typecast into. The Gentleman, he's been in that as well. Wolf of Wall Street, he was in that.
Yeah.
So anyway, his story was like that he was being typecast as a rom-com and he really didn't want his career to go in that direction. So he actually he literally turned down offer after offer, and they kept up in the offers up to like £14 million for one film. And he held his ground for 3 years, saying, no, I want to be a proper actor. I want to do serious stuff and various things. And he literally held his ground for 3 years. And then eventually it came. And I think it was Lincoln Lawyer or Dallas Buyers Club was the first one. And then from there on in, his career went in a totally different direction. He did some of the most, amazing films, gritty films ever. And it just absolutely blew up. But what was really interesting is he was talking about his childhood. He had a very, what should I say, I think he's a very hard worker because he was, let's say, dragged up rather than brought up. But his parents were very kind of strict, but like it's given him the resilience that he needs to be amazing at what he did. And I just love this one quote. His mum used to say to him, "Quit asking me for new shoes. Let me introduce you to the guy with no feet." And I just thought,
okay,
it was just like, she was like that. That's how direct it was. Like, I just thought, amazing. So yeah, go and listen to that because I found that really, really, really good. He also mentioned on there that apparently, I didn't know that Elon Musk had said that drug dealers know more about business than 95% of college professors. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah, controversial, but he's onto something like how some of these drug lords, like literally are running billion-dollar empires. And they also, the fact that they do have to do it all undercover with no systems and documentation and no like business masterminds to go to. And, there's no podcast on dealing drugs, is there? So, yeah, some of them are phenomenal business people.
But do you know what? It's interesting, because I've had this myself. It's interesting how hard you'll push yourself and how much you'll put up with the difficultness when the reward is big enough. And I guess with that, because they're not paying tax and all that, the reward is big enough to work really hard. And this is the problem we've got in the UK at the moment, is that the incentive and the reward is not big enough to want to try really hard. And I think that's a challenge, isn't it? Anyway, let's move on to this week's news story of the week. So this week, a report's come out, it's all over the news, about a report from MIT in America reporting on AI, and it's kind of sent the industry into a little bit of a tailspin because their report says that 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing. So this is the report that reveals that despite the rush to integrate powerful new models, about 5% of AI pilot programs achieve rapid revenue acceleration. The vast majority stall, delivering little to no measurable impact on the P&L. And the research, it was based on 150 interviews with business leaders and a survey of 350 employees on the analysis. So there's been a lot of talk. There's a load of YouTube videos about this going around because, like, you've got different people reporting different things. You've got people talking about AI is going to take your jobs and all the rest of it. But then you've got this real down-to-earth study that I think I find interesting, which is, okay, it's all very well having the technology, but as we know, adoption is the key to everything. And I think adoption's a real problem. And I think there's a further bit in this, a further thought in this, that obviously these are bigger companies who, like anything, like turning an oil tanker, find it really challenging to change parts of their business. And I think it's much easier when you're a business with 2 or 3 people to implement something AI and go running off in a different direction. You see this, your business is a commensurate size that it's not too big yet that you can't still implement things really quickly and move in the direction. But actually at a key level, and we talked last week, didn't we, about how few of these big businesses represent such a large amount of revenue in the UK that if they can't adopt AI and make it work for them and they ditch it again within a period of time, how quickly is AI going to go through? And are we indeed going into an AI bubble that isn't going to materialise? Sorry, it's a load of information.
So the last comment about going into an AI bubble, I totally agree with. Now, it was only, I'm trying to think when I quit my job, but 2.5 years ago now that I left an organisation that was 250 million turnover. And coming out of that big business world, trying to do anything was hard work. So, for example, we still produced, every month we produced our management accounts in Excel, and we wanted to implement Power BI. And we've been talking to the IT department for about 3 years about trying to just implement Power BI, because getting Power BI connected to the data and getting it talking to our system in a live way was just simply too much for our IT team to get their heads around. And I remind my team, for any of them that have come from big business or have worked in industry, about how agile we are as a small business. Because me and Jenny, for example, we were looking for a new cashflow tool, and we sat down and we literally, within the space of a day, had connected 4 different cashflow tools to various customers in Xero and had trialled them all out and therefore made a decision on which one to go with. But if you were trying to do that in big business, that's probably a 2-year project to source suppliers, do due diligence on the suppliers, then you get an NDA with suppliers, then you invite the suppliers in and they do like a whole bloody week of finding out how your business works, and then they'll come to you with a proposal, then you'll do a quote, and you're 6 months in just talking to people before you even know whether it can do what you want it to do or not. So
it has to be that way, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
No, I mean the fact that small businesses, they have to have, there has to be some edge in starting up your business. We know this because we're starting sorry,
I was just going to say, the risk in big business is so great that when you get something wrong, and in big business, they're using these big ERP systems. Everything's integrated. We can't just change something in finance because it will literally impact every department in the business. And that's the issue, is that they're not very agile. And a lot of these big businesses are talking about AI and implementing things like that. But honestly, I think people would be shocked if they lifted the hood and saw how many big businesses are still even keying invoices into the systems manually and the data entry. Because even trying to move to these systems that are now 15 years old is a challenge for the likes of HSBC and, the NHS and all these other large organisations. Their systems are archaic. Their systems are not ready for AI. They need to upgrade their system, and only then can they really start thinking about integrating AI. So I'm not surprised with this at all.
Yeah, they get to a size. I had it, 15 years ago with a company that wholesaled newspapers, and they just took the decision because of the cost of investment. And it's not the cost of the new system, is it? It's the cost of the implementation, the consultancy you've got to bring. These companies spend just millions on consultancies to make it happen. And they just duck it and duck it and duck it. And then the company that has done it then just eats their lunch, and they're dead. They are absolutely dead. Yeah. And we see this time and time again. It's almost like the Blockbuster effect of not spending the money because you're just trying to put the money in shareholders' pockets. They've just got a different set of things. But I think, it's great in one way, because this is why otherwise people would spend their life looking at markets and saying, I won't even bother because I don't stand a chance. It's the David and Goliath thing. We see this at the moment with the software company that we're currently launching. If we looked at that market and we looked at some of the players in it and the millions of pounds worth of backing they've got, we just wouldn't bother. But actually, you recognise that there's ways that you can be agile and do different things faster than they would be able to, because now when they make a change, it is like massive, isn't it? Trying to make that tiny little change in their business. So often they make no change because it's too risky.
I think with these bigger businesses in particular, which is probably who the MIT did a lot of the survey on to get this sort of 95% statistic that 95% of AI is failing. I very much imagine that there's not been any proper ownership of it in the business as well, because I can remember sitting in board meetings and the MD would say, oh, we need to be using AI and we need to be doing more with data analytics. And it's like, okay, I get that, but we don't have a culture of that in this business. So what, we're going to employ one whiz kid that's going to sit in a department on their own and do all this stuff, and they're just going to be completely alien to the rest of the business. And it's really got to be a cultural thing. It can't just be the role of one person. Or you know, if you're lucky and you've got one person in your business that is a real champion and is really passionate about it, fine, they can absolutely take the mantle for it, but it still has to be a cultural thing in the business that everybody is embracing this and learning and growing together.
I mean, this type of thing has to be completely top down, literally CEO down. If the CEO isn't championing this and forcing this down from the top, it will just not work. And the other reason is the thing that you fail to recognise until you've worked in big business is that the vast majority of people within that business will be actively trying to sabotage this success. Because they'll see it as a danger to their jobs. They're reading constantly that their jobs are being eaten by AI.
I'm sorry, I wholeheartedly disagree with that.
No, I've been there. I've been in big business. People actively are blockers.
No,
people are blockers.
No. That's the people.
I see blockers.
People are blockers because change is often not managed well, and communication, not because they're actively trying to sabotage something so they can keep their manual job. I think most people in big organisations are really overworked and would lap up the opportunity to speed up some of their work and things like that. But the process change and the change management is not really done properly. So they're nervous about change. They don't embrace change for whatever reason. And I think if they just manage that process better, they would get better results out of it. I'm sorry, I wholeheartedly disagree that people are actively trying to block the change to protect their job.
We did a news story a few weeks ago about how people were actively trying to, be dismissed or something. I mean, there are absolutely people out there who are, when you've worked in corporate, you realise that there are people out there who will actively be blockers and difficult, and they're protective over what they have and what they know. They don't want anyone else to know it, so they could never integrate into a business.
Simon, I'm sorry, it's not a conscious effort. It's not a conscious effort. I think it's just natural human instinct. I think it's natural human instinct taking over. I just think the vast majority of workers are just good people that, you know, maybe don't have the emotional intelligence or make bad choices, not deliberately. They're doing it very subconsciously because of behaviour patterns and things. I just think most people are good people.
You've obviously not worked in an organisation that has a really bad culture, doesn't manage change, and people are like that and are very, very difficult over it. So, yeah. Okay, well, we agree to disagree on that one. We definitely have different opinions on that. But I do, I see all sorts of things. But I'm not massively surprised to hear that that's the challenges that they're having. I mean, I was reading something else recently about all the different various adoptions of technology, and it's a 20-year gap usually between when something becomes the new thing, and then you usually wind forward 20 years and then you see true adoption in it. And we're at the very early stages, aren't we? ChatGPT only really hit the market a few years ago.
Hey, look, I mean, I'm still getting businesses come to me that are completely paperless.
I know
they're printing everything out. They're running their business based off books and paper and Excel spreadsheets. So, absolutely, the minority of businesses are racing ahead with AI at the moment, but the vast majority are not.
Yeah. And I wonder how many, it's a bit like the old greenwashing thing. I wonder how many are ticking the box from a corporate perspective saying, we're doing AI, but are they truly leveraging it? And I think that's what this potential study is trying to suggest, that they're maybe not getting the benefits that they truly are. But great. Well, let's move on to this week's deep dive, where this week it's a key topic, isn't it? Because we're going to talk about the only 4 ways to grow your business. Which one's yours? So talk to us, Claire.
So this is a model that has been around for coming up to 75 years now.
Yeah.
If my maths is correct. Yeah. Whoa, 70 years. Yeah. And it is something called the Ansoff Matrix. And Ansoff is I think he was a Russian-American mathematician, business strategist around in the sort of 50s, 60s. And he originally published this concept or this strategy in the Harvard Business Review in 1957. So I think when you've got something like this that stood the test of time, I think we can sort of sit up and pay attention to it, because when you hear how simple this is for helping you sort of decide on the right path for growth for your business, I think you'll really enjoy this. It's called the Ansoff Matrix. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about different ways to grow our business. Now, we're not talking about tactical ideas of we could sell this to this customer and we could do this marketing campaign. We're talking about high-level strategic areas for growth rather than the actual activities that we're going to do. Okay. And what the Ansoff Matrix does is it breaks this down into 4 categories. But what happens is that as we start at number 1, that's kind of the least riskiest, right up to number 4, which is the most riskiest.
Yes.
And
they get like more complex, the things to do in your business. And you should always start with the first one, really like sweat that one before you move to the next one. And maybe with some of them, and for some businesses, you won't even enter some of the areas because they just don't make sense. So.
Exactly.
Right.
And one of the things that, you know, in the business world, depending on what strategists and sort of big names in the business world you follow, they all say slightly different things. I know Alex Hormozy in particular is very much like, you should be able to get your business to nearly 8 figures before you even need to think about doing anything other than selling one product. He's very much like simplicity. Then there are other people like James Sinclair, for example, who's a big fan of diversification and having lots of different plates spinning at the same time and things like that. So there is no right or wrong answer.
Well, given the net worth of variance between those two people, there probably is a right and wrong answer, isn't there?
Well, yeah, that is an argument.
One at nearly a bit, and many hundreds of million, and one at 20 million. I think, yeah.
What I like about the Ansoff Matrix is I know I am brimming with ideas. I have probably more ideas than I do hot dinners of how to grow my business. And what it really does is help me get some clarity on, is this the right step to take now? And how risky is this? And is that a risk that I'm prepared to take? Or can I do something a bit simpler for now with less risk involved that is probably going to grow my business as quickly? So that's what the Ansoff Matrix just helps you do, is maybe just put things into these pockets. And once you've got them into the pockets, it's also, okay, actually, is this, really low risk and I can delegate this to one of my team members, or is this really high risk and I probably need to bring in some external resource and some people to help support me through this?
Yep. Great.
Okay, so we're going to start with number 1. And number 1 is market penetration. And this is just a fancy way of saying we're going to sell more of the same stuff to our existing customers. Now, when we say our existing customers, we don't necessarily mean people that are already buying from us. We're saying our category of customer, our demographic of customers. So if our demographic, if we're like, I don't know, like a beard oil company, we're going to continue to sell more beard oil to more men. Simple as that.
Yep.
Okay. So we're not going to be trying to break into new demographics, new geographies, anything like that. So if we're a UK company, it would be UK men, maybe of like, I don't know, like 25 to 50 is maybe our demographic. We're just going to try to do more of the same. Yep. So to do that, you're just simply going to do things like increase marketing spend, try and increase customer retention, all of that type of stuff. So it's just kind of more of the same activity as to what's happening in your organization at the moment. Just existing products to your existing customer demographic.
Yeah.
And you can see why that's the least risky.
Yep.
Because you've built up a lot of knowledge around that. You know how that business model works. You know what the cash flow behind it looks like. You know what the customer habits are like.
Yep.
You know what your margins are. You know what the cost base is. So from a financial perspective, it's less likely that something's going to go wrong.
And a great way to go about this and understanding when you're reaching the point where you should potentially think about moving on to the next step is to do a couple of things. First of all is to understand your TAM, your total addressable market. So, it's the first question they would always ask you on Dragon's Den, which is, what's the market size? And I think that's really important, because once you understand the market, you can then start to understand what a sensible proportion of the market you can control is, or that you can address. Second is to perhaps look at your competitors in the market and look at what the largest market percentage that a competitor has of that market, which will give you, I always take the view that, well, if they've done that percentage, if they can address that percentage of that market, then that's a potential goal of where saturation might potentially be.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things you can do around marketing. That's the way I've always looked at it, which is, until you're knocking on the door of that number that your competitor's doing, actually, why would you go anywhere else? Because the simplest, easiest and most cost-effective thing to do is continue to stay focused on the one thing, which is growing your market.
And this is a strategy that we've used in your business, isn't it? Because originally, like probably about 12 years ago now, when we were doing the business plan for your estate agency, the plan was to open in our local town and then expand to neighbouring towns, etc., etc. And before we knew it, we were going to have 12 branches, each with their own office, each with their own team, etc., etc. And quite quickly, we realised that one of the biggest costs for your business is marketing. It's quite a significant amount of investment every month. And why would we try and be marketing 5 areas at one time when we could just put all of that focus and a little less money into marketing in one area. And what's your market share now is about 20-25%, isn't it? And so we're probably now at that, nearing that saturation point, but we've been able to go for the last 8-10 years without needing to think about going into a different area, opening a new office, duplicating costs, things like that. So there's so much opportunity if you can focus down.
And a really good example of why this is so powerful and why I've followed this model is that I speak to other estate agents that have multi-branches. We'll sit down and we'll share P&Ls, we'll look at that. And I haven't yet found a branch that I talk to who has a higher operating profit than we have through a single branch that they have through multiple branches. And some of these people are covering 4 times the size geographically that we're covering. And they're doing higher numbers. Yeah, they're doing higher turnover, but they're not doing a higher profit. And for me, the only reason we're in this is to make a profit. So,
and the main reason they're doing that is because they're having to pay to market in such a huge geographical area and more people to cover it, etc. Yeah,
multiple branches, property. There's just so many overheads, and then they need middle management to manage across those to cover, sickness and various other things. So it's a very powerful strategy. Market penetration. Do not overlook how much that you may never have to go past this number one. And I'm a massive passionate advocate of the one thing. Like it's a big thing for me. Focus is a big thing. And it's difficult when you're an entrepreneur with tons of ideas and things going on because you always just keep wanting to do the next thing. But there is so much under your nose that I guarantee, you will not be saturating your market.
Yeah, I don't think there are many small businesses in the UK that are anywhere near saturation or reaching that saturation point. So the argument would be is that you don't need to move on to these next ones, but these next two that we're going to talk about. So the first one, market development, number 2. And we're upping the risk factor a little bit here, but with market development, what we're going to do is we're going to sell our existing products into new marketplaces. So the most obvious thing to think about is taking our existing products and expanding it geographically. So it might be that you're going to, if you're a coffee shop, you're going to open a new coffee shop in a different town. Or if you're a distribution model, you're going to open a new office in a different country, that type of thing. Or if you're selling holidays to under 18s, you might now think about selling holidays to over 50s as well. So same product, different markets, different demographics. So this is getting a little bit risky. And the reason why this is getting a little bit more risky is because you've got an element of unknown with this, new markets, especially if you're going geographic, you don't know your new markets as well. So you don't have information about them. You don't understand their buying habits. Therefore, you're likely to make mistakes with your marketing and your messaging and blah, blah, blah. And therefore, there's a learning curve to go on, which always costs money. But also expanding geographically in particular, there's a cost to it, particularly if you're a location-based business. So, one of the businesses that we work a lot with is self-storage businesses. Every time they reach capacity from market penetration, there's only so many storage units that they've got. Once they're filled, if they want to keep growing their turnover, they need to expand geographically and open new locations, which comes with massive capital outlay. So it's definitely a more difficult way to grow. Absolutely. Longer term, it could end up being more profitable for them, allows them to grow a bigger business of scale, but it's not without its challenges for sure.
I think it's fair to say, and we hear this a lot from business owners, we see this a lot from business owners. I think when you're ready to make this next step, you've got to be committed to, if we talk about like the coffee shop example, or the estate agent example, at the point where you've reach your TAM in that market and you're highly profitable, you have to accept that when you make that next step, you're going to take steps backwards before steps forwards.
From a
profitability especially from a profitability perspective. But I think you also need to accept that probably having 2 branches or 3 branches is going to be worse than having 1 branch. So I think if you take that first step, you need to be clear in your head that your plans to get to 10 branches plus. And that is your ambition of the type of business and scale of business that you want to grow, not that you just want another 1 or 2 branches. Because if you only want another 1 or 2, you can probably get better profitability through the one, keeping the one that you had.
Yeah. As soon as it is a job in itself to manage multiple sites, just making sure that everything is consistent from an operational perspective, managing the finance of them all. That's essentially like, to have an operations manager or an MD in the business, that will be a full-time job. And so that's an additional cost that you wouldn't have if you just had one site. So the goal is generally, 10 is not necessarily the magic number in every industry, but for pretty much a lot of industries out there, if you don't plan on getting to more than 10 sites, don't do it. Just stay with one and
it's almost like
keep going with market penetration.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've done market penetration where we're going to sell more to our existing customers. Then we've done marketing development where we're going to sell our existing products into new customer bases.
Yeah.
Number 3 is product development. We're going to create new products for our existing customer base.
Yeah.
So an example of this would be if you're a car garage and you're doing maintenance, you're now going to start doing MOTs, or you're now going to start doing car insurance or car cleaning, or, all of that type of stuff. So the reason why this can be really powerful is because if you've been somebody that's found it quite easy to generate customers and you've got a really good solid customer list, you've got good CRM, you're good at marketing, actually this could be a really good angle for you. So an example, how would we do this in our business? So I guess our software product's one of these, isn't it, that we're launching. So our existing customers, but just an extra service or product that we could sell to them that increases the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's a little bit more risky because whenever you've got product development, there's normally upfront costs. Even if it's just a service, it doesn't need to be a physical product. There's still generally some upfront costs. There's time, there's planning, there's creation. Do your terms and conditions need changing? Mapping out the sales process for it, mapping out the operational process.
Yep.
There's always this sort of upfront bottleneck of time and costs.
A good live example. I mean, you talked about her lettings agency recently that you knew. A good one with that, I hear this quite a lot, is a letting agency who then opens a cleaning company because they're constantly using cleaning. They're outsourcing it, so they create their own cleaning. They have their own in-house cleaning company, and they bolt that on and charge the landlord accordingly. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a good example.
So it would be different if they were already selling cleaning to their customers and they just happen to be outsourcing it. That's slightly different to what we're discussing here. What we would be talking about is they're then launching a new cleaning service to their customers.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different to bringing something in-house, but it's a very similar sort of strategy. If your customers buy product A that you're selling currently and you think that your customers would also want to buy product B, then let's just sell product B to them as well.
Yeah, package it up.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it can be quite a powerful strategy as well, because quite often customers actually want the convenience of being able to get everything under one roof or everything nice and easily. So actually often customers are very receptive to it because they don't want the hassle of having to go elsewhere to get the things that they need anyway. It's a bit like when you buy the toy on Amazon and they're selling you the batteries.
The batteries at the same time. Yeah, absolutely.
It's actually convenience.
So number 2, market development, is about getting new customers. And number 3, product development, is about getting new products or services. And they're very similar from a risk perspective. But the difference in terms of focus is I would suggest that if you're a business that finds it easy to get new customers, go with number 2, market development. Take your existing products, your existing operations, and then just go into new areas. But if you're a business that's very good from an operational perspective, but perhaps you find marketing or customer acquisition difficult, then go with product development. Think about what more you can sell to your existing customers. Don't worry about trying to source new ones.
There's actually there's another one here that I think, sorry to break the 70-year-old Ansoff Matrix, but there's you've obviously number 3 is about creating new products, so that is quite risky. But actually, what about the just bolting on the existing products? That I would do it within the market penetration bit before I do market development, which is this. It's a bit like in mine. It's like referring the solicitors, making money on AML checks, those type of things. It's like, well, I'm not creating anything new, and I wouldn't do that before I expanded. I would definitely be putting them in because they're easily sourced.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a fine line, isn't there? Because upsell and referral fees and stuff like that. I mean, you could argue, is that just market penetration, selling more of the same things to your existing customers, or is that product development? I mean, it's like a fine line, really, isn't it? And I think you've got to decide how different that product is. If you're a cafe and you add a new cake, you're not going to say that that's product development.
I think the point in this is exactly what it is, which is the word create is key here. You're creating a new product.
It's not more of the same. It's not just a different range to what you currently sell. It's like something different, something tangibly different.
Okay, great. And then the last one.
So this is the ultimate risk, and this is diversification. So this is brand new products into brand new marketplaces. So you can obviously see why this is the most risky, because it's completely new marketplaces that you don't have experience or knowledge of, and it's completely new products that you don't have experience or knowledge of.
Basically a new business.
Yeah. So for example, if you're a car manufacturer and now you decide to sell solar panels as well, the two are completely not connected. There's no crossover. The only crossover that you may have is that you can share an admin team.
Yeah.
But in terms of the business and synergies and things like that, it's essentially a standalone business that you're creating. And there is a long-held argument in the stock market as well as to whether, like big organisations should diversify. So when you're holding a portfolio of stocks and shares, should you go for a spread or should you go for something very condensed? And generally, when you look at, portfolios that you can buy on the open market, some people will argue that if you want to diversify, you will just go and do that diversification yourself. You don't need your portfolio to be diversified. Yeah. So sometimes people say it's spreading the risk, but other people argue that focus on what you know. There's less risk in what you know. So, don't, if from a stock market perspective, like just buy stocks and shares in IT and tech, or just do it in renewable energies, or just do it in services. You don't need a stockbroker to cover all of that for you. You can go and find a stockbroker in each industry. It's that type of logic.
I think people misinterpret this massively. You picked on a really good point here, which is because people hear, because you've used the stock market example, and people hear the words diversifying the stock market and various other things. And that is absolutely the right advice in the stock market, where you know nothing about stocks, you know nothing about that industry. Of course you're diversifying, but then people can end up applying that. So I hear this a lot with people like, real estate and various things. They're really good at, running properties or developing properties or whatever else. We don't sit here, do we, as accountants running an accounting firm and go, bit risky that we've only got an accounting firm, isn't it? We best diversify. No, we say we're bloody good at being accountants and people want to use our services and exchange money for value. We're going to do more of that. So you're completely in on that, but it's because you're entirely competent in that area. So I think people often, they misconstrue this diversification thing to the fact that it's more about your education, your knowledge, your competency in the area. And if you're highly competent, highly educated in one area, then that's actually in many ways less risky.
I think that a really good argument that somebody once said to me about this was ice cream vans. Obviously, ice cream vans, highly seasonal. You've basically got trade for 6 months of the year selling ice cream.
To do with drug dealers again?
No, it's not to do with drug dealers. So you've got ice cream sales 6 months of the year. And then the obvious thing is they're like, oh, well, why don't you go and sell hats and scarves? Or why don't you go and sell welly boots or umbrellas or something like that? Well, that's a completely different business. So we've got 6 months of the year, we've got one business here, and then that only runs 6 months of the year, and then we go and run this other business for the other 6 months of the year. That's diversification. Completely different businesses, no overlap whatsoever. Now, what would be more sensible is if we said, okay, you've got your ice cream business that runs 6 months of the year, you've got your routes, you've got your customers that come to you, you've got your equipment. Instead of selling ice creams, why don't we just switch the product out and sell hot drinks?
Yeah.
Do you see the slight difference of how we can utilise everything that we've already got?
Complementary.
Yeah, it's complementary. It overlaps. So we just tweak the product rather than tweaking the entire business model and everything we know about it.
Yeah.
You can see immediately that it's less risky to do that. And so I think that's the thing. It's like you've really got to think about what's complementary, what sits alongside what you've got, what uses your existing assets. And that asset might be your customer base, or it might be physical assets in your business. It might be your skills of your operations and your setup, and that you're really good at marketing. Whatever it is, make sure that you're utilising that rather than going and completely trying to sort of reinvent the wheel and start from scratch again.
Great. Everything?
Well, you've got a nice little summary at the end there, haven't you? I thought you were going to do a nice little wrap up.
Oh, no, I did. I don't know. I didn't even write that. But I mean, the reality is where are we? What's the safe play? The safe play is just do number one.
Market penetration.
I think I've made my opinions abundantly clear on this. I don't think most people are almost ever ready to do anything else because they just don't penetrate enough of the market they have. Markets are huge in most cases, aren't they? I mean, name me a business that you go into where the market's that small. You need to move to the next one so quickly. Can you think of one? What would it be? What business would it be?
Look, do I want to run an accountancy firm forever? No. I'm getting itchy feet already and I want to try different things and do different things. And sometimes, I know it's not the right thing to do, but it's just what I want to do. Yeah. So you've then got to think, okay, I am going to do something a bit more risky. I am going to go with a new idea. So something a bit moderate risk would be market development or product development. So trying to sell my existing product into new markets. So I might think about going into Europe because we've got a couple of European customers and I'm licensed in Europe. So that could be an obvious play.
I just think that people totally underestimate this thing. People totally underestimate the power of headspace.
Yes.
Your head can only focus and hold so much stuff. And the second you start to go in different, and you're trying to look at different things, There's a really famous saying, so where the focus goes, the cash flows, isn't it?
But if your team, if you've got a business that's running fairly well without you,
you've got to put an absolute head
and
in, of course,
what the risk is that people say that my operations runs without me, but what then
really,
happens
the
is
they're
not generating new customers, and so the business stands still. If you've genuinely got a business that is continuing to grow without you, then you're ready for the next thing, which would be market development or product development. But if you take your eye off the ball of your existing business, does it continue to grow? I think that's the question. And if it's not a point where it continues to grow, your team source new customers, turnover keeps going up year on year, profit keeps going up, then focus on that. If you've gone past that stage, then absolutely think about something a bit riskier.
And I think that is the challenge, isn't it? It's like that's really hard to do. Most business owners, the second they take their focus off it stagnates.
Yeah.
It's really challenging.
So in short, summary, the safe players market penetration, do more of what you're currently doing. Sell your existing products into your existing customer demographics. The moderate risk areas would be either getting new products or getting new customers, not both at the same time. And then the highest risk would be diversification, where you're going to go after new customers and new products at the same time. Yeah.
And there are times for some big businesses where that highest risk one ended up being very high risk for them, such as people like Blockbuster, who should have diversified, didn't, and then it was the demise of them. So actually, would have been a safe bet for them at the time, wouldn't it?
Do you know what, though? Ironically, Blockbuster didn't need to diversify. They just needed to. They had such a good customer base. Everybody was on membership cards, so they had huge value in their customer base. They just needed to come up with a new product that they could sell to those customers.
Well, it would have been a new product and a new market. It would have been digital streaming, not physical products, and it would have been
same customer base of film lovers.
Possibly.
It was not a new customer base that was needed. They just needed to modernise their product.
Possibly.
That was all they needed to do, was product development.
So maybe you never need to do
because look at
diversification.
Netflix.
There we go.
So even when you've got a completely dying industry like Kodak, Jessop's, Blockbuster, Classic, and all they needed to do was develop new products.
And on that bombshell, let's move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra.
So this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra is Scribe. We have been using this in my business. I would say that generally I thought I was quite good at systems and processes, but we've had a few new starters over the last month, and we've got a couple of new people coming into the business in the coming weeks, hopefully too. And as the team grows, what is becoming quite apparent is our processes were not quite as slick as we thought they were. So we have started to use Scribe, which essentially is really, really easy to use because you just go about your day-to-day work. But when you do it, you press play on Scribe and it records your screen and essentially creates like a video tutorial of how to do a process. So it's brilliant. And what it does is it annotates the video. You can see exactly where you're clicking on the screen. And afterwards, you can just have a quick review of it, edit the notes if you want to, etc., etc. So what has been really good is I've actually basically been out of the office for a whole week, even though I've had a new starter. And so I could pre-record all these scribes, and it's just the how-to manual. They knew how to do all of the different tasks that I needed to delegate in for that week. So yeah, Scribe, there's a free version, and I think the number of videos that you can record is unlimited, and you can share with an unlimited amount of team members as well. So it's just a really great way of documenting all the SOPs in your business.
Good, brilliant. So it takes all of the hard work out of trying to operationalise all the things that everyone knows they should do, but never does because it's dead easy to do it.
It takes ages to like take screenshots, add notes, highlight things. It just does all of that for you. It's like recording where you're clicking.
Amazing.
It's annotating what you're doing. Yeah. And then you just review and tweak at the end.
Great bit of tech. Brilliant. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. As always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your current accounting and you'd like to work with Claire and the team at Profit Cash Growth, nip over to the website, profitcashgrowth.com. On there, you can book a free discovery call, or you can have a finance health check of your business with Claire and the team. And as always, please rate, review and subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast, and just share this with any business friends that you have that would get value from it. And we will see you again next week.